Henning here, and today we're going to talk about the Polar 2 by Blackstar, which is a little bit weird. Why is Blackstar, an amplifier company, making an audio interface? What expertise do they have in that field? I'm going to say nothing. I'm going to venture a guess that they probably teamed up with people from companies that know more about this stuff, but they had an angle to make this good, and specifically for guitar players. That's very interesting. So let's get this out of the box. The box does state that it comes with Ableton Live Lite and the Sam James guitar software suite, which is one of the big angles because that whole software suite usually runs you about half the price of this interface, which is about $200. So you get the whole Sam James suite with it, which is pretty phenomenal. I've used it in many videos. I've shown you what you can do with it. It's a great collection of 2 amps and pedals that covers a wide range of things. So why is this interface really good for that? Well, I'm going to look at that. That's what comes with it. There's no power supply because it is USB-C powered. And for that, we have a USB to little roundy plug thing. So you need a 5-volt power supply, but we all have those to charge our phones. That's nice. Would be nice to have a power supply. I'm not super okay with USB-A to USB-C cable, and that being the only cable. Because that means out of the box, if I don't have any other cables, which of course, I mean, who doesn't, I can't hook it up to my MacBook Air, which only has USB-C. So honestly, Blackstar, a USB-C to USB-C cable should be included. But it isn't, but of course, I have them. Furthermore, when we get to bitching, try to find the software on the website. You won't. I do this for a living. I know where to look. It's impossible. Yeah, you have to register it. So you have to go through the whole registration process, after which I then find out that I'm already registered with my name and I didn't have to make an account, I couldn't make an account and blah, blah, blah. And then you have to put in the serial number and where you bought it and possibly even upload a proof of purchase and I don't know, stupid shit. And only then can you access the software. Now, I get that you can access the software that you purchased with it, meaning the St. James software, Ableton Lite, there's Melodyne Lite, there's a 480 reverb plugin, there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes with it, which by itself is already worth the $200, so way to go. But what about the control software, which is really all that I wanted? Just the software to run the little mixer interface. To get that, you also have to register. That's not cool. That should be free to download on the website directly for someone who just wants to get the frickin' job done, Blackstar. It's way too hidden behind a layer of please register the product and put in the serial number. This is a great interface for someone using VST amp software or virtual amp simulations. Now, my friend Valeria Soto stayed here for about a month and she recorded a whole bunch of covers. And she is, no joke, only using the St. James software. She gets everything that she needs out of that software. So I gave her this interface because it's a much more realistic representation of someone using this. I have a bigger studio. I've got big Universal Audio Apollo interfaces and all that stuff. Honestly, this wouldn't be for me in this studio. This would be for me on the road. But for Valeria, it's the interface to use. So let's check out how she did. So I gave this thing to Valeria to test because that's a much better test subject because she literally is mobile with a laptop and she actually, no joke, as her main thing uses the St. James software. It's almost as if we manufacture that for the video, but it's actually what she uses because it's pretty good.
I like it.
So that's a baritone guitar. She's working on a cover. Not undercover, on a cover. It's different. And she's tracking some vocals with a Lewitt Ray. And guitar, in tempo 2, she's on the enhance. There. And that's it. So, I mean, this is really the setup that makes the most sense. Laptop, that thing, record some guitar on the go, bus powered, done. And I think she got some good results.
True.
It's great for her. Bus powered with USB-C, plug in headphones, plug in little speakers, good to go. So you've got two combo jack inputs, meaning you can plug in XLR or quarter-inch cables. There is phantom power for condenser mics. Very simple. There are level controls for each input, and you can switch each one to instrument or line. What if it's mic? There's no mic setting. I don't know how that works. And then there's the enhance, which we'll get to. And there's also a master level, which actually doesn't show up in the software. It's kind of weird that there isn't a master level indicator, but that's how loud it goes out. And there's input LEDs and output LEDs. This lights up when it gets power. In the back, it's ultra simple. We have two quarter-inch outputs, the little roundy, pluggy 9-volty, but it's a 5-volty thingy, and USB-C. And obviously, powering it with USB-C is the way to go. Now, the special thing about this is the enhance, where instead of a normal input on an audio interface, it goes through some kind of guitar input stage magic things. A FET transistor is a word I heard once in a while. I don't know, maybe something like that, which means instead of hitting your guitar very hard and it's hitting a hard ceiling and then giving you digital clipping, it actually goes into more analog clipping and gives you a little bit of drive, but not this hard digital ness. So it's more guitar-like and should respond, theoretically, more like an actual guitar amplifier when you're working with a virtual amplifier. Let's go and I'll show you how this works with the software and how I would use it in a DAW environment, because the special thing about this is, yeah, you can plug in and go direct and hear whatever you're playing direct out of the output without any latency, because it's just being channeled through. That's called a direct monitoring. And if you're working with a modeler or something, that's what you want to do, because then you have no latency. You just hear it directly through the interface and you're recording in your DAW, but you're not monitoring through the DAW. But when you're working with a DAW, you want to monitor through it if you're using VST amps like the St. James software. Now that requires monitoring in the DAW, and that usually comes with latency, but not too much latency if you have virtual tracks. And even though it's very simple, they added one stereo virtual track to do just that. And I show you how to set that up. It's a little bit complex, but once you get why you're doing it, it's brilliant. Okay, now let's look at some of the special features that the Polar 2 has to offer. Obviously, the Polar 4 would have the same things, just double. It is a really fairly simple interface. If we look at it from the top, you have the enhance on or off, which simply just means that's that extra preamp stage, probably a FET something that makes it more guitar-ish. And if you're pushing it harder, it will distort in an analog way instead of giving you digital clipping. You can, of course, do that for any kind of input, not just guitar input. And that can be manually switched on. And then you switch between line and instrument. Of course, we're going in with guitar, which means we have instrument. And that means, in this case, that's a high Z input. We're only going in with the guitar in one. That's how loud it's coming out of my speakers. And in the back, it's now powered with USB-C. And there's a stereo output, and that's it. And that's quarter-inch. So it's a very simple interface. In the front, we have headphone out. On the Polar 4, you've got two of those instead of one of those. And then right here is the switch for phantom power, which of course we don't need now, but you would need that for using a microphone with phantom power. The app or the control software is equally simple, but I have to explain a couple of things to you. So let's go there. That's the Blackstar software running in Cubase, but before we go there, I'll show you the Polar software. So I'm going to turn this down. That's coming out of Cubase. So you got the two inputs right here. Input 1, input 2. Oh, I can't. Why? Because I don't have the input monitor on. So you can change these together to be a stereo channel. These are right now stereo channels, and you could also unlink them to have 2 mono channels. But since those are the main outs, I don't know why you would do that. For the virtual, which we're going to get to, you might. You can monitor the input. For the guitar, you might not want to do that. So you click on Input Monitor, and now you actually have control. And that takes the input on the interface directly to the output without going through the computer, actually. So that sounds like so. And you don't really want to do that because it's, it's a DI'd guitar. But let's check out this enhance thing. I'm pushing it too hard now. Still sounds slightly digitally clipped, but a little bit nicer. So it's just a little bit more guitar-like. They're saying it feels more like an amp. Well, in theory, it does. So we're going to leave that. That's convenient if you're running vocals and you want to go directly to the output for your vocalist to have 0 latency. That makes sense. For the guitar, we kind of need to run through the software for it to sound good. So you turn that off. There is no direct output monitor level. This is what you would have on the interface here, but there isn't actually a visual representation of this knob on the interface. So you don't actually see that anywhere here. We could also route the output mix to the virtual channel to then maybe be recorded again, kind of a loopback feature. I think that works. So for our purposes, we're going to turn the direct monitor off. We're going to monitor through the computer. And the cool thing is, this is where your playback left, right would come in, let's say, from your DAW. And I think they have Ableton Basic or whatever is included, which is pretty cool. There's quite a bit of stuff included. Most notably, the Blackstar St. James software, which is half the price of the whole system anyway. So this is your main output from your DAW. And this right here would be the virtual output. So I'm pumping it into Cubase at the moment, and I'm monitoring through the virtual output. So the benefit of that is, rather than the playback output or the main output, is that you can circumvent all the stuff in your DAW, meaning extra plugins, extra mastering stuff on the master and so on, and get the lowest latency possible. It actually is rather low latency anyway, because when I just turned it on, it had 5 milliseconds input and 5 milliseconds output latency, which actually clocked in at less than the same settings on my Apollo, I think. But let me show you how this is routed. You can, of course, go in, DI, and then apply the plugin to each individual guitar track. That's a possibility. And then that means you're recording DI signals, and later on, you're actually changing the sounds on the channels. I do not do that. I record it like an amp, meaning what I set up gets recorded. You can't change it later, but that makes you make decisions and stick with your choices. It's the way that I would like to work. So what I'm doing is I'm going into this VST amp stereo channel, and you can see this, of course, applies to any kind of DAW. So on the inputs, I made a stereo input, and I selected channel 1 as my input. Very straightforward, and that is the channel 1 on the interface. In the St. James software, I select mono, meaning I'm only going in on the left, but it will still output stereo, which is why this is a stereo input, but I'm only going in left. Then you select mono here, and it will output stereo for those panning delays and all that stuff. Now, where is this going? It is going on these 2 guitar tracks as input, VST amp. Up here, see VST amp. That's what's coming from that input. But we're not hearing that, because the problem is when you record onto that and you have it in monitor, which you would set up at the bottom here, monitor. Now we can hear what's coming in. Then you record, and you want to play that back. Yeah, but then you have to unclick the monitor, otherwise you're not hearing it. Then you record again, so you have to click the monitor again. I don't work like that. I make myself a monitor track that's always in monitoring. That way, I can record on tracks, I can listen back to tracks, and I don't have to click and unclick the monitor button. So if you look at my monitor channel right here, this is also input VST amp, right? And the output is going to what I called VST. And that output is actually the virtual tracks. And that is always in monitor mode. So I'll show you that virtual track right here. It's a virtual output. And you can send a separate signal to it, separate from the main out from your DAW. The way you do this is stereo out, and you make another output. I call it VST. And that is going, instead of output 1 and 2, it is going to virtual 3 and virtual 4. The control room, the main output here, is going to output 1 and 2. So any kind of, my whole session in Cubase, everything that's already recorded, including guitars, would go out of the main output, but the played guitar, the real live guitar, would go out of the VST. And that means if you have a mastering plugin, let's say, on your stereo bus, on your output, that mastering plugin will give you latency. If you have any kind of extra plugins on your tracks, that will all give you latency. We're going around that. We're monitoring the input. If you look at this track right here called monitor, that's monitoring directly what the VST amp is doing, which is here, and giving it directly out to the VST, which is our virtual tracks. So that way I can record the St. James onto, let's do this, right here. That's where it's being recorded, but this, it's where it's being monitored. You can see the little orange thing there. So I can hear it at any given point in time. So it's being recorded right there, and when I play it back, I don't have to unmonitor whatever. And it's on my playback. So when I now want to play to that, I don't have to make a new track, monitor, unmonitor. As long as the little orange thing is clicked here, I'm continuously hearing it, and I can keep stacking tracks. Let's try that. And again, I don't have to unmonitor. So a simple audio interface like the Polar that is made for guitar with its enhanced input, but then has a very simple function. One virtual track is absolutely brilliant because you can just continue recording, do the setup where you're monitoring your Blackstar St. James through the virtual track, but you keep recording on all your guitar tracks. And obviously the St. James plugin is absolutely amazing. I mean, I love that thing because it's not trying to be a Marshall or Vox or whatever. It's just a whole bunch of great sounds. With pre-effects, which are now turned on. We don't want those. The simple fact that there's a main output and a virtual output makes this the ideal low-budget guitar interface You can direct monitor if you have to. If you're going in, let's say, with a modeler or whatever, and you want to hear that very simply, just direct out of the output again, you can. If you're using the St. James software, it's absolutely brilliant. You can record, as you can see here, in loads of different sampling rates, up to 192. It's absolutely stupid. 48 is totally fine for anything you want to do. It's simple enough to understand and flexible enough to do exactly what you need to do, which is record with guitar software. And since the St. James offers 2 amps, bunch of pedals, and gets you to actually create music instead of looking through presets and amps and cabs, and it has everything you need to do a variety of styles. I've done a bunch of videos on that. Please watch them, where I show you how to use it creatively. Definitely the amp nice and bright. And I think, given that the St. James software usually is, I don't know, $100, and this whole interface is 200, come on, back to me. So the bottom line, Polar 2 also comes as a Polar 4 for 370, I think, which is kind of neat if you need more inputs. However, I think the brilliance of this thing is just being able to go in with one plug or acoustic guitar, one mic, and record at home, very simply, record on the road because it's USB bus powered. Throwing this in your laptop bag, it's a little bit bigger than a laptop bag maybe would want, but it's small enough and light enough to take with you in your backpack. And you have a bus-powered interface that's tailored to guitar players, comes with a great software suite that by itself is half the price of the actual interface, and actually only the St. James. So if you add the Melodyne, the Ableton Live Lite, and the reverb, and there was something else that I can't remember, that's a pretty good package. And since I really do think that the St. James software is absolutely great, this is a recommended buy. Because half of it's the software, which you should be getting anyway. And it's a simple interface that has everything that I would want for guitar recording. The virtual outs, the direct recording if you're working with a modeler, mic inputs if you're tracking guitar. Simple enough to do the job, not too complicated to confuse you with complicated routing and shit like this. When I saw that Blackstar did an audio interface, I was like, do we really need this? Please don't ask me to review this. What in the world am I going to say about it? Well, you just heard what I say about it. It's not bad at all. And yeah, they're paying me for this video because what I do is work. But my opinions are my own, and my opinion about this is that it's good. For someone like Valeria, this is perfect. If you're Valeria, or you're Valeria adjacent, you work with a laptop, you work with software, and you're looking for an interface, Blackstar Polar 2 might be the thing to get. Maybe Polar 4 if you need more inputs at the same time at that price range with 4 inputs. There are also other companies, but they don't have necessarily the FET input. So make your own choices. I'm not your daddy. Come on. I'll put links below to all the shops that I work with. Please use them. That supports the channel big time. It really shows that you appreciate what I do. So thank you for that. And as always, animals at the end.